Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, colleagues, and everybody who's here today. Let me start with some numbers. 58,936. It's the number of people who are homeless in Los Angeles County. 36,165, the number homeless in the city of Los Angeles. Dwarfing the number of available beds for people to sleep. 921, the number of people who died on our streets, homeless and broken last year, a number that we will likely exceed this year. In the face of those numbers today, we are having a conversation not about faster and more urgent and less expensive ways to find places for people to sleep, but about legislation to tell people where they cannot sleep. Colleagues, for me, simply put, that's ass backwards. I understand why we're in this moment. I mean, this moment is born from anger and frustration, and it is absolutely understandable. It is palpable out there, and you would be dead inside if you were not angry at the proliferation of encampments and homelessness and this expanding crisis in Los Angeles. You'd be dead inside if you weren't furious that kids are walking on the middle of the street because they can't walk on their sidewalks on the way to school. And you would be dead inside if you are not absolutely pissed that people are dying on our streets every day. So the anger and frustration, absolutely reasonable. But anger does not dictate or does not result in good policy. And frustration does not result in effective solutions. In fact, what happens when we respond to the very understandable anger and frustration is the conversations get twisted, the conversations get poisoned, and the conversations get perverted. And I think some of that is happening in the proposal we have before us today. I'm going to reacting to what is written before us today. Let me first talk about Section C. Which is intended to prohibit certain behaviors. The way it's written currently in this report in front of us would make it illegal to approach, follow closely, or speak to a person in a manner that is intended or likely to cause a reasonable person to be intimidated. Now, I don't for a second believe that it is the desire or the intention of the chair of homelessness and poverty to have this effect. But if you spend any time at all reading the Root or the Black Press, not a week goes by where some white person doesn't call 911 because they're intimidated by a black person waiting in a Starbucks or having a barbecue or entering their own home. And sure as we are standing here, as written, this would have a negative, racially disparate impact in the city of Los Angeles. On Section D, while I agree that Boise gives us some leeway, I think that the cumulative effect of the recommendations in front of us, Section D, are vastly overreaching and wind up making a false promise to people who want us to get rid of encampments and sleeping on the street, because we don't have enough cops and we don't have enough money to go out and actually enforce it if we approved it as written. And it's a false promise to people who are homeless because it says that we are telling you where you actually can sleep. And cumulatively, it eliminates pretty much everywhere. And it's also, I think, a false promise to the courts. Boise gives us a little bit of leeway. And this, instead of taking the inch that Boise provide, takes a mile. And frankly, I'm embarrassed that our elected city attorney has been saying that he's supportive of this, because I don't think it's legally defensible. So,
all right, come on, let's continue the conversation.
Now, let me be clear. I actually think Boise gives us some leeway, and I think that there is a reasonable conversation to be had about the merits of having some discrete restrictions around encampments to encourage folks to support them and around schools, perhaps. But the real place to have that conversation isn't 4118. It's 5611. It's not about legislating where people can be. It's about legislating where the belongings can be. So what I'm afraid of is that this conversation is part of this addiction we have in Los Angeles to keep talking about criminalization and to move backwards. And I would ask in closing, Mr. President, there's just some what-ifs in my head. What if today, instead of having this conversation, we were having a conversation about using $40 million of the state money to provide shared housing and get 5,000 people off the streets in the next couple months? What if today, instead of this conversation, we were having a discussion about partnering with the county and doing master leasing? So we go out and we rent thousands of units so people with vouchers that can't find a home can get off the streets quickly. What if we were having a discussion about 24/7 outreach so we can meet people where they are? Or what if we were having a discussion about doing what Everyone In is recommending and expanding the Encampments to Homes program, which the Times wrote about comprehensively, to actually get people a promise of getting out of the encampments and getting them out there? Colleagues, we cannot legislate homelessness away. We can house it away, we can service it away, we can prevent it away, but we cannot legislate it away. Thank you.
Okay.